If we take space seriously in terms of how architectural design shape our ideas about sex and gender and social difference more generally, how is it that the bathroom as a social space has escaped the scholarly radar? How is it that people ignore the bathroom as a space of geographical attention? A lot of people think that the bathroom is not a legitimate topic of scholarly investigation until they think about the bathroom for a few minutes. And what I find typically happens is people react in shock. Why are you studying the bathroom? Or they react with a kind of revulsion and disdain. Ooh, why would you study the bathroom? And then they start to tell me the most fascinating accounts of their own experiences in bathrooms. Stories they'd never shared before, but seem to be quite fundamental to their sense of self. And then they seem to think, wow, there is a lot that happens in bathrooms. So for example, the people we interviewed would talk frequently for an hour to 2 hours relaying their accounts of what happens in bathrooms. And we found we didn't even scratch the surface. So much happens in this space that is silenced. I teach a graduate course called Critical Sexualities, and among the first readings I have my students do is they read the 3 essays on sexuality by Sigmund Freud. And Freud talks extensively about toilet training and its relation to the Oedipal complex. And I realized that my students just didn't want to talk about Freud. They actually wanted to talk about bathrooms. And at first I thought they were off track, until I realized maybe what my students were trying to tell me is that gender identity takes shape in bathrooms and through toilet training. Toilet training manuals often advise parents of the same sex as the child to do the toilet training. And so you see the gendering process happening in the way a child learns to eliminate. And what I find is that the gendered cultural politics of the bathroom in fact shape our sense of self, our own sense of having a gender identity. Gendered bathroom spaces implicitly give others the license to police the gender identity of others. So for example, if you are trans or gender variant, if you're a masculine woman or a feminine man, and in the so-called wrong bathroom, other people feel entitled to be transphobic or to interrogate your presence in a way that is not so easy in spaces that aren't so rigidly gendered. Usually people assume that women are potential victims and need to be protected, but actually what came to be apparent in the research is that non-trans women would often yell at, sometimes hit or harass trans women in these spaces. Other times, male vigilantes, jealous boyfriends, would actually go into a woman's bathroom if they saw a recognizably trans woman walk into that space. And so what I realized is that if your gender identity doesn't fit the sign on the bathroom door, you're very likely to be subject to harassment. What I suggest in the book is actually 2 things. One, to have gender-neutral toilet options, but also to keep gendered bathrooms with the big proviso that we should be uncertain about what the gender sign on the door means and who fits into it. So we keep the gender sign, but we don't use it as a way to regulate or police who goes into which space. A lot of people think that the relationship between sex and gender identity is normal and natural. And this is why many people feel that the gender signs on bathroom doors are logical. What I'd like people to think about is that gender identity is something that is not just socially constructed, but architecturally mandated. I found that ideas about the sex of the body, regardless of one's gender or sexual orientation, was interestingly mapped onto bathroom design. Some people talked about how the urinals resembled large vaginas. Other people talked about how the oval toilet, enclosed in by stall partitions, resembled the anus. And of course, the stall, stereotypically, is something that women are supposed to back into and crouch onto, whereas men tend to adopt a more active, upright position in front of the urinal. And so people started to ask questions like, does this mirror heterosexual missionary sex? Does this mirror normative ideas about genitals? And how is it that, if you look on the wall, you see a condom dispenser, you can see a dispenser for cologne or maxi pads. And so one interviewer quite interestingly said, it's funny, you go into a bathroom and it's like all you gotta do is smell good, cover it up, and get laid. Somehow, ideas about how sex was supposed to happen was even built into the design. I'd like people to start looking oddly and questioningly at the stick figures on the bathroom doors, and to think about how gender-segregated spaces impact upon those who don't fit conventional ideas about what it means to be a man or a woman. And I would like people to start designing creative bathroom spaces. Not spaces that do away with gender per se, but spaces that encourage us to be gendered in different ways, or to open space up to those who are trans or gender variant or recognizably queer, so that we don't continue to perpetuate what I would call an architecture of exclusion.